We're often told that for a society to be truly free, the government must fear its people. But what if we've got that completely backward? What if the health of a society is actually measured by how much its citizens respect and, even fear the state's power to enforce the rules for everyone?
So let's really dig into that. In a genuinely advanced, functional society, who is supposed to fear whom? Should the state be walking on eggshells around its citizens, or should citizens have a healthy respect for the state's authority? The answer is, well, it's not what you might think.
So on one hand, you've got this very popular idea that a government has to be afraid of its people to keep it from becoming a tyranny. But on the other hand, there's this kind of uncomfortable reality. A society that works well is often one where people genuinely respect the state's power to maintain order. Let's break that down.
To really get this, we need to look at a tale of two very different kinds of fear, and what each one tells us about the society it comes from.
I mean, think about it. If you're visiting a country like the United States, what's the one piece of advice everyone gives you? It's always, whatever you do, don't mess with the cops, right? And that's not just a travel tip, it's a window into a whole culture's mindset. But here's the twist. That fear isn't necessarily a sign of oppression. It's actually a sign that the state is powerful enough and competent enough to protect everybody's rights. The law is taken seriously because people know the state has the will and the ability to enforce it. Now, let's flip that completely. Picture a busy street in another city. Cars are double parked, triple parked, hazards flashing, it's total chaos. You have to ask yourself, does anyone here look afraid of getting a ticket? Of course not even a little bit. And that scene, that's not freedom, that's a symptom. It's a sign that the public sees the state as totally helpless, incapable of enforcing even the simplest rules of order. In their eyes, the state just doesn't have what it takes. So how in the world did we end up with two such different attitudes? To understand that, you have to look back at the history, often a very brutal history, that shapes this relationship with the state. See, the Western idea of a strong, rule-enforcing state wasn't just invented by some philosopher in an armchair. No way. It was forged in the fire of centuries of brutal conflict. We're talking religious wars, bloody revolutions, just massive societal failures that taught an incredibly painful lesson. Without a powerful authority to keep order, life is chaos. People didn't just accept order, they started to demand it. There's this amazing story about a Danish professor. Someone asked him about his Viking ancestors. These figures people tend to romanticize, and he was just brutally honest. He said, "My ancestors were murderers, rapists, and invaders. No sugarcoating it at all." But then, right after saying that, he added something incredible. He said, "I pay over 50% in taxes, and I'm not sorry about it. Everything here works great." That is the mindset. You have this unflinching, honest look at a chaotic past, and it creates this deep, profound appreciation for the order and stability of the present. Okay, so let's look at the flip side. Let's talk about societies that maybe haven't learned those hard lessons, which leads to something we can call a culture of convenience. What is this culture? Well, at its core, it's the belief that the rules are for other people. It's this collective mindset where everyone is looking for their own personal exception, their own little privilege, instead of accepting that we all have to follow the same rules for the whole system to work. And you see this everywhere. It's the person who double parks and says, "Oh, I'll just be 2 minutes." It's the feeling that I deserve a special break, that the rules don't apply to me in this one little instance. There's no guilt unless you actually get a ticket. It's this constant demand for personal comfort over public order. This brings us to a really fundamental idea that we often get wrong, the whole concept of obedience and allegiance. The word obedience can make us all a little uncomfortable, right? It sounds weak, like you're giving up your freedom, but is that really what it is? Or is it just a basic part of how human societies have to work? Because here's the truth. Every single one of us is obedient to something. We all are. It might be an ideology like capitalism, a religion, a set of scientific principles, or even just the simple social contract of waiting your turn in line. Nobody is truly free from allegiance to some system. So the really important question isn't if we obey. We do, that's a given. The real question, the one that defines an entire society, is what do we choose to obey?
Do we obey a set of rules that creates fairness and order for everybody? Or does everybody just obey their own selfish impulses?
And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. If a society is stuck in this culture of convenience, how does it change? What kind of revolution does it actually need? Let me tell you, it's not about storming government buildings. A violent political revolution is not the answer, because the problem goes way deeper than just politics. It's a cultural problem. It's in the mindset of the people themselves.
The only real revolution, then, is an intellectual one. It's personal. It starts when you reject an education that just teaches you how to comply, and instead you go out and seek real knowledge about yourself, about history, about how the world actually works. This revolution isn't fought on the streets, it's fought inside each of us, starting with the simple decision to practice self-discipline for the good of everyone. And we'll end on this thought. A society's system, its government, its rules, its chaos, or its order, it's not something forced on it from the outside. It's a mirror. It's a direct reflection of what the people in that society are. A society gets the system it is. So the final question is, what do we see when we look in that mirror?